morning, everyone, and thank you for being here. I'd like to introduce a few special guests that I'm fortunate to have join me today. Our partner, our state attorney, Susie Lopez. Madam State Attorney, thank you for making time out of your busy day to be here with us today. Tony Azinger and Sarah Mahoney have created the Florida Human Trafficking Fund. These are two volunteers that work their butts off traveling around trying to raise money for law enforcement agencies, smaller agencies who can't afford to conduct these types of operations. They provide that necessary funding to make sure they can do these types of operations. And number two, they also support organizations, non-government organizations that help individuals that are rescued when they need that respite care. Tony Azinger and Sarah Mahoney, thank you both for what you do. At the same time, we have Senny Dressler and Laura Henderson with One More Child. When I talk about those organizations that provide that respite care, it's a phenomenal resource. And when we first started our human trafficking enforcement several years ago, what we found is we weren't very successful, number one, conducting interviews, and number two, providing that respite care. It wasn't there. It is there now, that phenomenal care when these individuals have the courage to come forward and say, listen, I'm breaking the grasp of human trafficking. It's organizations like One More Child that provide all those services, medical, psychological, whatever respite care they need to make sure they're successful and they don't return back to the grasp of human trafficking. Thank you both for taking the time to join us here today. I'm so grateful that in Hillsborough County, this community, we have a human trafficking squad. A contingency of full-time detectives and supervisors and analysts that focus year-round on combating the heinous crime that is human trafficking. Operation Summer Shield was born out of a vision. It was born out of a vision that we knew as we approached the summer months, we wanted to do even more. We know children are out of school. They have more free time. They're going to be spending more time on the internet. We wanted to make sure we were being extremely proactive to make sure that no one fell victim to human trafficking for those who wanted to prey on them. So we solicited resources and manpower, analysts from various components from around the entire agency to come in and supplant this effort. So from April 29th, the 102 days during summer until Friday before school started, we really ramped up our efforts to combat human trafficking and to assure that no child fell victim to human trafficking. Operation Summer Shield was tremendously successful. And at the same time, when you look at these results, it's worrisome. It's worrisome. I had the privilege and pleasure of joining the human trafficking squad a few times for a couple hours on several of the days during the operation. On day one of the operation, I showed up after 2 hours that the operation had started. There were 10 individuals under arrest in a waiting room waiting to be transported to booking. The demand to purchase sex was so great that the squad had to purchase an additional room to keep up with the number of individuals responding to the hotel. That day, they broke a record for the number of individuals wanting to purchase sex on a single day. That was until the second day when they smashed that record. Almost an hour before the operation started, there were 4 individuals already in the parking lot, anxiously awaiting to purchase sex from another human being, constantly texting our undercovers, can I come in early? Can we move things along? So as we talk about celebrating the success of Operation Summer Shield, it's worrisome that the results were as productive and fruitful as they were. Operation Summer Shield resulted in 148 individuals being arrested for various crimes, 11 individuals charged with human trafficking, 7 victims rescued. 5 were adult females who saw this as an opportunity at a better way of life. 2 of those individuals were juveniles, only 17 years of age, now under the custody and care of One More Child. Well, they'll get that respite care they so desperately need and deserve. I'd like to highlight a few of the 4 of the more egregious offenders and describe their crimes. 33-year-old John Randall Craddock, who lives in Alabama, traveled to Florida to visit with some family members. In addition to some quality time and taking it all in, all the great things that Florida has to offer, he also decided to maximize his enjoyment by engaging with a 15-year-old girl online. Here in Hillsborough County, we are committed to stopping predators like John Craddock, and unbeknownst to him, he was actually talking to our undercover detectives. With the objective of having sex with this 15-year-old, Craddock sent numerous explicit and perverse messages and even audio messages describing details of the sexual acts he wanted to perform on this 15-year-old. Believing all of his effort was about to pay off, he traveled to meet this young girl. Yet he received a big surprise when the 15-year-old turned out to be one of our undercover detectives. This next individual is no stranger to breaking the law. In addition to being on probation in Georgia, he was also charged in 2020 for keeping a place of prostitution. While here in Florida, he hatched a business plan of sorts to exploit women to perform sex acts for a profit. He made contact online with who he thought was a 30-year-old potential victim, but was in fact a highly trained member of our human trafficking squad. Over the period of 3 weeks, 28-year-old Devontae Kershaw laid out his scheme that entailed giving the trafficking victim just 40% of what she earned and generated if she produced at least $5,000 of income a week. And for his 60%, he would arrange the dates and travel to New York, Ohio, and Georgia. After attempting to groom our undercover detective for nearly a month, it was time to meet. Kershaw was so confident that he met with our undercover detective for more than an hour. And our human trafficking squad closed the deal with a solid arrest and a RICO charge, amongst others. As parents, we may hear about operations like this and think that could never happen to my child. But this next case highlights the terrifying reality that it can, even under our own roof. During the course of Operation Summer Shield, we received a tip that a 17-year-old girl who was being forced by her trafficker to secretly have sex for profit. To make matters worse, she was living at home with her mother. Her mother having no idea that she was trapped in a cycle of horror with 28-year-old human trafficker Dante Burton. Burton would post explicit photos of this young girl on adult escort websites, arrange the dates, and collect the money from her forced servitude. This sick scheme went on for about 3 months until we received a tip, and our human trafficking squad quickly went to work. A federal arrest warrant was issued, and Burton was taken into custody. And this young girl will carry the deep scars of this unimaginable experience forever, was rescued. Dante Burton will be prosecuted by the Federal Prosecutor's Office of the United States Attorney's Office. He is charged with sex trafficking of a child and faces a maximum penalty of life in prison. As for the victim, she is now in the care of the organization One More Child, who is providing respite care and services so that she may heal and see the bright future she now has. Equally horrifying is the next case that will keep any parent up at night. Dennis Aguilar Morado met his victim when she was just 16 years of age at a neighborhood park. After exchanging numbers, our bad guy spent months grooming her for the nightmare that began when she turned 17. Aguilar Morado had sex with this young teenage girl on at least 4 occasions and would pay her between $40 and $60 for her sex acts. It was not until our deputies encountered the two at an abandoned restaurant in Brandon that Aguilar Morado's criminal behavior ended. While on proactive patrol, deputies found the two in the back seat of a small SUV where they had sex in exchange for money, and Aguilar Morado was immediately arrested. Our human trafficking squad became involved, developed additional probable cause, and charged this suspect with human trafficking. The teenager was rescued, is on the road to recovery, and supported by professionals at One More Child. To our human trafficking squad, thank you doesn't seem adequate enough. As most families were taking time off during the summer, you worked additional hours and long days to safeguard this community. Operation Summer Shield was named after you, the shields to protect the victims, the shields to protect the most vulnerable, the shields to protect countless individuals that never became a victim because of your efforts. It is you who is the line, the wall between good and evil. Thank you for everything that you do. When you do a big comprehensive operation like this, it's just not manpower and resource intensive at the sheriff's office, but now you have 148 individuals that need to be held accountable for their criminal acts. That's a heavy lift on our criminal justice partner, Susie Lopez. Madam State Attorney, thank you to you and your team for your diligent efforts, and I'll turn the microphone over to you and then return to answer any questions you may have. Madam State Attorney.
Thank you, Sheriff. That's a lift that we are ready and willing to take on. Human trafficking not only robs people of their freedom, it also robs people of their dignity. This crime is on the rise across this nation, and our local law enforcement community is doing our part to take a stand to protect victims. It's incredibly difficult to make an arrest in many cases because these types of crimes can be happening right under our noses. Whether it's labor trafficking or sex trafficking, victims are scared to death to come forward. It's why human trafficking is also so difficult to prosecute. These are complex cases where victims are terrified to testify against their traffickers because they're in fear of the people who have trafficked them. Human trafficking victims are often people like you and me who fall into a tough situation and don't feel that they can find their way out. I am in awe of the brave victims who tell their story to help prosecute traffickers so we in the criminal justice system can hold them accountable. I want victims of human trafficking to know we stand with you. The State Attorney's Office here in Hillsborough County will vigorously prosecute anyone responsible for these horrific crimes. And we don't just fight for justice. We connect victims with the services that they need. Every survivor in our office gets a victim advocate. That victim advocate helps them through the entire court process, both inside the courtroom and outside the courtroom, to make sure that they feel safe and have access to the resources in our community. And I want these criminals, these human traffickers, to know that human trafficking in the state of Florida carries a mandatory minimum sentence of life in the Florida State Prison. If you traffic in Hillsborough County, you will be held accountable. Thank you, Sheriff, for your partnership.
Thank you, Madam State Attorney. What questions may I attempt to answer?
Hi, Sheriff.
Hi.
One of the suspects is a Hillsborough County firefighter, Ronald Favada. How surprised were you to find out that this is a man who goes into homes? He protects our community during a very vulnerable time.
I think cases like when we arrest him is a loud, resounding message to everyone that's in a position of influence that it doesn't matter who you are or where you work, you're never above committing a crime. You're never above the law, and we will hold you accountable here. What we've seen is a trend when we're doing these operations, whether you're in the military, whether you're a physician, whether you're a paramedic, whether you're a law enforcement officer, no one is above the law, and you will be held accountable and prosecuted here in Hillsborough County.
Sheriff, we're talking about a lot of arrests here. Can you talk about the breakdown? How many of these guys were communicating with undercover detectives? How many were tips? And then the last example you gave, it sounds like maybe detectives saw the pair at an abandoned restaurant. What kind of the breakdown of how these arrests came?
Yeah, when you enforce the behavior, the criminal behavior, human trafficking, it's a multifaceted approach. What you see, these results, is a culmination of a lot of different operations, all within one that we named Operation Summer Shield. Whether it's individuals that are trying to purchase sex, Sometimes it's our undercovers who are selling sex. Sometimes it's focused on individuals that simply want to have sex with young children. We scour the web, the internet, even the dark web, to make sure that we're coming into contact with those individuals before they're able to victimize another human being. We're out doing streetwalker operations. We're at hotel and motel. We're at entertainment establishments and even massage parlors. Anywhere where we think human trafficking will occur, that's what we do. And this entire focus is to reduce the demand. If you extinguish the demand, there will never be a need for human trafficking. There will never be another victim of human trafficking. So that's what we continue to concentrate and focus our efforts on. We will provide you in the press packet the breakdown of everyone who was arrested and what their charges were. But that's from this multifaceted approach that the Human Trafficking Squad took over these 102 days of summer. You know what? There's a lot of video, and we wanted to give you some. We'll give you even more. But what you're seeing here is during the undercover operation, just how relaxed these individuals are. I don't think there's a lot of people we arrest that are saying, "Hey, this is my first time." These are individuals that are victimizing people on a daily basis, and that's what's being reflected. Because what's being reflected is individuals showing up at different parts of this operation, and the undercover detectives taking them into custody.
We know there are at least 7 victims that were recovered. 2 are working with one more child. What else can you tell us about maybe the other 5?
Yeah, the other 5 are going through the process, and as the state attorney alluded to, it's tough. The biggest obstacle we face is they're fearful of their trafficker. Sometimes they threaten safety to them. Sometimes they threaten safety to their family. So it's really difficult for these women, as courageous as they want to be, to break the cycle of recidivism or break the cycle of human trafficking, because they live in such great fear. And that's why you've seen a lot of criminal organizations starting to get involved throughout the country in the human trafficking game. If you come out and commit a robbery, you do this, you're dead to rights, right? It's hard to beat that evidence. But when you have a victim who's scared for her life, scared for her family's life, and a lot of times scared to come forward and testify against their trafficker, it's what makes these victims, what makes these type of trafficking cases so difficult to prosecute. We're giving them the counseling that they needed. We've encountered a lot of women that were engaged in the sex trade. Some of them we were able to rescue, some of them we weren't, and we spent an exorbitant amount of time giving them resources. They weren't ready, for whatever the reason was, but they have a card in case the day comes when they are ready. We'll be there to provide that type of help with organizations like One More Child.